Appreciate it. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our crypto webinar. We call it Crypto 202. We did one last week called Crypto 101, which is sort of a primer on cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And once you get started, you go down the rabbit hole. There's really a lot involved, and the space is innovating like nobody's business. It's growing super fast, and there are new innovations, new products, new programs every single day. But what we want to do in this show tonight is share with a couple of experts. I have Joel Valenzuela on the line with us, and we'll ask him to give an introduction momentarily, and then Keith Ammon might join us as well. But we wanted to connect people from the greater Liberty community, Free State Project, people who are looking at New Hampshire, with some experts on cryptocurrency, blockchain, and all that NFT stuff, and really give you guys some good resources. So welcome everybody. Also on the line with us is Amy Lowe. She's the marketing director for Porcupine Real Estate. And I'm the broker, Mark Warden, for porcupinerealestate.com. We don't know much about the technology side of things, but I have done a few different real estate transactions in cryptocurrency. And really, this is provided tonight as a public service. Joel, again, welcome. Why don't you give the listeners a bit of your background and the exciting things you've been doing in the space for the last few years?
Hey, so I'm Joel Valenzuela. I moved to New Hampshire 2013, and on the road there, I had someone pay for lunch with Bitcoin, and that's kind of how I really got started. And so I'm currently a podcaster, content creator, and a consultant for different applications, especially decentralized ones. It's so yeah, that's the long and short of me really quick.
Okay, love it. And you're an expert on Dash, and Dash is one of the many cryptocurrencies or altcoins out there. So if people have questions about that specifically, please post them in the chat room. Amy will be monitoring the chat, and we'll jump in if we have some burning questions. Certainly this is meant to be interactive, not just a monologue. So all of you participants that are here tonight, we welcome your engagement, and don't hesitate at any point to ask questions to get some more clarification on that. All right, I'll share my screen from time to time. Quickly about real estate, question is, can you buy property, let's say in New Hampshire, with cryptocurrency? The definitive answer is yes. I've done it twice. I was the first real estate broker in New Hampshire to do a transaction entirely in Bitcoin. And then I did another one 2 years later. It was super easy. I found a title company that was friendly to the idea. They opened up a wallet on Coinbase so they could accept the earnest money deposit into that. And then at the closing table, we sat down and the title company zapped the earnest money to the seller. The buyer got out of his phone, the seller got out of his phone, they zapped the balance due in Bitcoin from one to the other. And we sat around, waited for some confirmations in the blockchain, monitored those until we knew it was irreversible, and then shook hands and exchanged keys. It was really great. So it is possible for sure. The real tricky part in New Hampshire, or anywhere is, for that matter, is finding a seller who is interested in accepting Bitcoin or Ripple or whatever type of currency you're talking about. And because there's so many people that still don't understand it, that's going to be a learning curve for people. And of course, another challenge is that a lot of people have a mortgage to pay off. And the mortgage company, the bank, doesn't want BTC. They want fiat currency, or at least a wire for that. So you have to kind of work out those kinks. Sometimes the seller will need to come up with some cash to pay off the loan amount, put that in escrow, and then can accept the balance in Bitcoin. So if you work with an experienced realtor, we can help you with that. One of the gentlemen on the line tonight, one of our viewers, Brent, is down in Nantucket, and he's getting into that space as well. So maybe we'll see him do some good work down in Massachusetts with this kind of buyer. And then one thing is tax implications. I actually had a $1 million sale where the buyer, my client, the buyer, bought a $1 million property in New Hampshire, lakefront, but the seller was 80 years old and had nothing to do with cryptocurrency. So he had to convert his crypto holdings to fiat in order to do the deal. So that's an example where the transaction is not in Bitcoin, but it's indirectly related. And if you're in that situation, there's some options for you, but you have to consider capital gains tax, using a big exchange, how long it's going to take you to liquidate hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoin or other crypto. So those are things, to consider. But we welcome these conversations. And if you're down in Mass, call my buddy Brent. If you're in New Hampshire or want to invest in New Hampshire, call me. Okay, this is perfect for Joelle. This next slide, I hope you all can see, it says goods and services. And Joelle, tell us about, especially where you are in the seacoast of New Hampshire, it's my understanding that there are a bunch of businesses now that accept crypto. And maybe you can talk about that, how you actually survive without using fiat, and tell us about AnyPay and other applications.
Yeah, so New Hampshire's kind of been one of the first places in the world, and still one of the dominant places in the world, where you can pay for goods and services directly in cryptocurrency. And a lot of merchants out here, especially in the seacoast, but there's a few in Manchester, and there's arguably more in the Key area. I haven't really checked up on that lately, but it is a pretty thriving kind of local economy. There are a lot of brick and mortar businesses that will take cryptocurrency payments, and they usually accept them directly and do not convert them, at least not immediately. And so there's a merchant point of sale app called AnyPay, which is the most commonly used one, and it's basically a front end that allows people to easily take the crypto. So they'll open up a little app, and then they'll get a QR code, and you can just scan that and then send the crypto in there, and it says paid, and then you're done. Outside of the storefront business kind of thing, like where you walk up to a coffee shop and try to buy something, is probably one of the most challenging um, things to integrate some new technology there, because usually you have to do it through existing point of sale systems and do a whole bunch of other stuff, especially in like a fast paced environment. But if you go to like local farmers markets and things like that, where the kind of environment where you can usually talk to the business owner and just take payment off of their phone, then you kind of find that to be a lot more common.
And then, I'm not sure I'm muted. Okay, and then I can understand in Portsmouth, for example, they're basically buy pizza and buy lunch and buy other things. So give us an idea of where you see around the country the most things happening with sort of an integration between the consumer at the retail level and cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so the uh, the biggest challenge is getting into large point of sale systems, because like most people use something like a Square point of sale, Cake. There's another one, a Clover, a bunch of these kinds of things, and they kind of need to integrate things first. Now um, there are quite a few integrations coming that are going to be nationwide through. I believe BitPay is the processor that has become integrated into some of these point of sale systems, such as you see in like the grocery stores with the little pin pad and little screen over there. And so there's it's kind of like going in that direction where you've had little bits of mom and pop retailers in crypto heavy zones accept it, which is kind of the New Hampshire experience here. And it's kind of moving more into like a mass integration at a time. Now, on the other hand, though, on the as far as in between systems, that's something that's really taken a huge leap in recent years. as an interim step. So from the consumer side of things, it's gotten significantly easier. Um, so for example, this is one app I like to highlight because I use it all the time, is called Dash Direct, which works exclusively with the Dash cryptocurrency. But once you have one crypto, it's easy to swap in and do another one. And it basically lets you buy gift codes in the amount, in precise amounts, instantly, for just about any major retailer you can imagine. So say you go up to, say you want to buy like a new refrigerator at Lowe's. You can go to Lowe's and there's like a $800 refrigerator or whatever. You can just go type in 800 and hit buy, and then you buy a gift code, and then they scan the barcode and you just pay with crypto. So you can do that at something like a Lowe's or Home Depot really easily. And they just started testing out a new feature that would basically do that for buying like MasterCard prepaid credit. So you could just spend that anywhere. So like right now in the US, you can spend cryptocurrency. You can only have that, and you can live off of it entirely with just one app, which is really cool. On the other side of things, from the business owner, if they want to take it, it's depending on the business, it's a little bit more complicated, especially with like the accounting and payroll and things like that. But that stuff is starting to come along pretty quickly as well.
Okay, very cool. Well, thanks for the update on that. And then I think Keith has joined us. He's on the road, but Keith, can you hear us? Okay. Keith Ammon is a friend of ours here in New Hampshire. He's also a state rep, and he's been doing some good things in the legislature to try to educate the old farts in the New Hampshire House and Senate about what Bitcoin is, what the blockchain is, what cryptocurrencies are, and then he's trying to follow some of the models out in the state of Wyoming legislatively that have really helped to invite more cryptocurrency businesses to the state. So we appreciate his good work on the legislative side, but man, it's a tough haul because the average age of the legislature in New Hampshire is like 65, and they just don't get it. We'll let you guys jump in here. I think everybody's seeing the screen now that I'm sharing on crypto terms. And Joel, we talked about NFTs a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Can you define that and kind of start with layman's terms about what it is and how it works? All I can think about is digital baseball cards, but there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah. So I believe NFTs are some of the most needlessly overcomplicated things in crypto as far as like to describe them to people, because people don't know what they are. The acronym is non-fungible token, which literally I guess means a one of one token. And the way I could describe it the easiest is uh, all of cryptocurrency is just a digital record system. And so with normal cryptocurrencies, that's like bills, like $100 bill or whatever. It's a piece of money that's literally just I mean, there's so many different dollar bills out there. It's like each one is not unique. All an NFT is a unique piece of paper, basically, or digital piece of paper, right? A record of something. So for example, if you have an artwork, that could be an NFT. It's just like a digital one. If you have your CVS receipt, right? That could be an NFT. If you have like a concert ticket, if you have like in real estate, you could have like a title to your property. That could be an NFT as well. And so it's basically a way of digitizing records in a way that you don't have one company that could control like everything. So like if you have like the title to your car, for example, you have a piece of paper and someone can't just decide to like they have to like physically steal that from you, which is much more difficult than just erasing it. It's not like let's say you get a concert ticket or something like that and it comes to you in an email. They could just take that away from you, and then you're like, hey, what happened to my ticket? And they're like, well, sorry. But imagine if you get something like that, like a physical ticket that has that permanence of ownership of a physical ticket, but it is still digital. So you don't have to worry about storing it in a vault and, getting it lost or the cat eating it or whatever it is. So that's just the overarching thing of NFTs. Mostly what you see today from NFTs, they're almost all artwork representations. And a lot of them are, shoddy artwork representations. Let's put it that way, but it's mostly just a digital collectible. That's 90% of what you see today. But in the near future, I would say 5, 10 years, just about every record, every one of one record, like a title to a property or birth certificate or anything like that, will be an NFT of some kind.
What is amazing is that they're getting real money for some of these digital artwork pieces, like the apes and some of these
Mhm.
pixelated graphics that are competing with real world paintings, from the masters. I mean, we're seeing millions of dollars spent. So a lot of that is speculation, of course, but it's coming, and we need to try to get out ahead of it. Hey, Keith, I don't know if you'll be able to unmute your phone in the car, but are you with us? And can you talk a little bit about smart contracts? I know he's there. We'll let Keith join us
Yeah.
momentarily. There you
I
go.
can,
Yeah,
yeah.
Joel, you can also expand it because JBT, who's on this call with us tonight, is
Uh-huh.
super interested in the smart contracts aspect of it in regards to real estate. We've talked about
Mhm.
that for real estate transactions, but eventually, the old-fashioned county register or registrar or
Mhm.
registry, they call it different things in different states, where they keep a track of all the property sales and such. Eventually,
Mhm.
that will all be on the blockchain, and I think smart contracts can facilitate that to some extent. So if you can give us again, an overview of what that means, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so a smart contract is, I mean, it's kind of like what it sounds like. It's a contract that's smart. It's more specifically a self-executing contract. So, for example, right now, if let's just say you have a lease and the property owner or someone breaks the terms of the lease, nothing happens in that case. Literally nothing. You need to get some sort of enforcement after that. You need to get the cops involved or something like that. You need to actually take a physical next step for that. And so, like, for example, if you have a tenant who just doesn't pay their rent, nothing changes until you start, for example, an eviction process, unless you take an action. What a smart contract is a self-executing contract. So in the case of like a rental contract, for example, you could have it so that if rent is not paid on time, then the access to the premises is automatically denied. As in, as soon as they become non-current on their payments, their keys don't work to get in anymore, for example, or then all their utilities get shut off like instantly, and the property owner doesn't have to know about any of this. It just happens automatically. And so it's kind of like the NFT concept where we've seen a few limited applications of smart contracts, mostly in the the DeFi space or the decentralized finance space when you have, automated loans and things like that happening. But eventually this will be a huge, like a vast magnitude of life is going to depend on smart contracts on things that just get automated like that. And for example, accounting and payroll is another thing I can easily see as something that gets automated. Once you have rigorously tested and vetted contracts that you can just change a couple parameters and then just every month people just automatically get paid and you don't really have to worry about an accountant making sure to go over the books and make sure everything works. It just like happens. You just plug people into a system and all the accounting is just automatically taken care of. Of course, the big risk with automated things is it's kind of like when you have your robot vacuum and he gets into the shower and starts like sucking up all the wrong stuff, and then you have to go do something about it. Is something can go horribly wrong, and so that's one of the things is with a obviously legal contracts today you have to go over with a fine tooth comb, but there is still a small like room for interpretation where when they get actually enforced, if there's something that's a little ambiguous, it could still be interpreted the correct way. But with a smart contract, you have to be very careful because one small parameter could change, could cause something to go horribly wrong. I'll just give a really quick example from recent times. So Solana is a cryptocurrency network, and to spare details, they had a big exploit and hack, and a bunch of money got stolen. And the reason they were able to do that is someone wrote in their smart contract, if the signature is valid and it comes from this verified party, then release the money. But so if it's not valid but comes from this party, then don't. If it is a valid signature but comes from a different party, then don't. But they failed to code in the double negative that if it's not a valid signature and it's not from this party, then the double negative equals a yes, given the money. And they just lost all this money. So if you're not very careful with this kind of stuff, then you could have just basically like a runaway smart contract. You just have to, you have to kind of start things over.
Well, it's kind of like real world contracts on paper that we have nowadays. If you don't read it, if you don't, if one party is trying to trick the other, then you're going to be stuck and you're going to be in a world of hurt. So that's good. A couple of these other terms here on the screen. We talked about DeFi and blockchain on the last webinar last week, and we can send you a link to that if you'd like. But something I don't know is, I hear it all the time, but it's airdrop. What the heck is that?
Yeah, airdrop is basically like a giveaway. It's basically a mass issuance for free of some sort of a token. So it basically, I mean, it's not a really complicated like subject. It's basically like saying, first 100 people to sign up get a free this, and that's literally what it is. So if you get an airdrop token, like a lot of tokens, like the creators, a lot of times they start out with all the tokens, and when you want a monetary system or you want something that people use, you have to get the product out to the people. And sometimes to just get things started before there is something that people are willing to like actually pay money for and buy, you just give them out. And that's really what an airdrop is. You just drop them from the air. There you go.
Like helicopter money.
Yep, that's
Okay,
basically
then what are gas fees? Is that the same as a transaction fee?
Yes. And this is where it gets, I mean, there's an aspect to this that gets insanely complicated, but basically gas fees are transaction fees. What they call gas fees, like you wouldn't call a Bitcoin transaction, you wouldn't say that though that fee is a gas fee because it's just like a payment fee. Gas is thought of as powering applications. And so it's not like someone charges you a fee to run this program. It is the exact same thing basically. It's just the term is like the expense. So for example, if I am trying to trade token A for token B on a decentralized exchange, um, it's not just okay, it costs some money to send the token and it costs some money to send the one I want back to me. But then in between, there's also this self-executing the smart contract that runs. And in order to run, that costs money too. So sometimes, for example, on high, like busy seasons on the Ethereum network in particular, but others as well, if you're trying to swap a token for another one on some decentralized exchange, then you'll have really expensive gas fees because you'll have to spend the money to send the money into the contract. You have to pay for the contract to run itself, and then you pay for the money that comes back out. And so all that together can get kind of expensive. But yeah, gas fees are basically how much it costs to do this stuff.
I think I've seen where some coins, when you pay a gas fee, it reduces the number of coins in circulation. Is
Yeah.
that right? It's a little bit different than Bitcoin's plan.
Yeah, a lot of different economic models have been experimented with, and Ethereum in particular, right recently, I would say like within the last year or so, implemented a token burn fee system, which I mean, now we're getting really into the weeds, but because you asked, basically instead of the nodes who process the transactions, right? The entities that process all the transactions, instead of paying them money, the money just gets destroyed, which makes the supply more scarce and therefore makes everyone's Ethereum more valuable. So it's kind of a ways of like when it's a weird economic trick sort of to make uh when so like if you get tons of business as like node operators, you keep all that money normally. But under this new fee burn thing, that would mean that everyone who has Ethereum at all, even the ones who are not directly responsible for doing that, kind of, they get the benefits of having a lot of business because their holdings go up. And I'm sure that they do that. I'm sure they do that in the traditional financial world with like, destroying shares of stock and stuff like that.
Okay, well, to switch to the next slide, you mentioned Ethereum, and Keith, I think Keith just got to a place where he's on a wired internet instead of the cell phone. So Keith, if you want to unmute, join us. I already mentioned that you're the state rep and working on legislation to try to educate the people in New Hampshire and Concord about what the heck this stuff is. But are you there? Are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, welcome.
Hey, I was at the State House all day. I just got home, so I apologize for being tardy.
Well, you earned your $100 a year, I guess, by being a state legislator in New Hampshire. So thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for yours too, Mark. I heard a little bit of the conversation, and I'm happy to chime in.
Well, Keith, let me ask you this. I'm sharing the screen, and right now we just started talking about Ethereum. Are you familiar with Ethereum?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if everyone was on the call last week. We went over just a little bit about how Bitcoin works, and it involves solving this arbitrary number, and that's what all the computers are doing. The easiest way to think about Ethereum is instead of solving that arbitrary puzzle, the Ethereum blockchain does computations with that compute power. And Ethereum is something called a smart contract platform. I don't know if you touched on that, Joel.
We talked a little bit about smart contracts, but I think we should remind our listeners that they're built upon the Ethereum blockchain in many cases.
Yeah, that's right. And Ethereum started out as a proof of work blockchain. Ethereum 2.0, they're migrating to proof of stake. It's a different consensus mechanism that uses less energy than proof of work. That's kind of the main goal. It's been coming for several years now. They've been talking about upgrading, and they finally initiated that upgrade. So a smart contract, the easiest way to think about it is like a vending machine. So let's say a soda machine, you put your 75 cents in, or maybe it's $2 now, who knows. But you put the coins in, that initiates the contract, and out comes the product that you selected. So it could be as simple as something like that. So a smart contract has inputs, and Joel went over the gas fees. So the gas fees kind of helps the smart contract execute. And then the smart contract is just computer code. It's something called Turing complete, which means you can pretty much do anything with the logic inside the smart contract. It runs like a snippet of code, or it could be very simple. It could be very complex. It could use a smart contract could execute other smart contracts, and they can all be tied together. And then the output, depending on what conditions that code, looks at, the output can change, and the output is always additional money. So it's like you're programming the money based on inputs and outputs.
Isn't that just an algorithm? Essentially,
Yeah, I mean,
the difference might be that it's on a publicly viewable, transparent chain.
yeah, I mean, an algorithm is sort of a general term for, computer code that runs. The idea is the contract itself gets stored, the computer code that makes up the contract, that itself gets stored on the blockchain. So that becomes immutable. There's ways to upgrade it, but the code itself becomes immutable. And that's also an interesting aspect of Ethereum because, it could lead to a situation where, this is a really complicated subject. I'm trying to just pick and choose here. There's something called a decentralized autonomous organization. So you could actually have like a company that runs its that does its business on the blockchain, and that company, sort of like an LLC or a corporation, could be made up of anonymous people around the world that agree to make up that company. And it can lead to a situation where, because it's immutable on the blockchain, it could lead to a situation where, let's say it goes to court because someone disagrees with the output, and the judge bangs the gavel and says, you must give this person this amount of reparations. And first, you might not know who was behind the company, and secondly, because it's immutable on the blockchain, it's difficult to change the outcome because it's fixed on the blockchain. So it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Ethereum, there's other smart contract coins or platforms. Ethereum is the dominant one. It was the first to market, and so it's primarily built on the most, from what I can tell. And it opens up new realms of possibilities. Joel mentioned NFTs. It was used to create other coins based on Ethereum. So a lot of the tokens and coins that you could buy are actually software that runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And in 2017, we had there's a lot of speculation in this market. In 2017, we had something called the ICO craze. It was sort of, it's similar to the NFT craze happening now, but ICO stands for initial coin offering. So companies would create scarcity or some kind of, issuance rate in code, put it on the Ethereum blockchain, but you're actually buying tokens that are code inside the Ethereum blockchain. And it also is used a lot for decentralized finance. So I heard snippets before, I think you might have touched on this, but it allows you to exchange one token for another token without using a centralized exchange. And there are tools out there. There's something called MetaMask that's used, pretty popular. It could be MetaMask it could be an app on your phone, or it could be an extension for your browser, but you can store your tokens in it like a wallet and then go on to one of these decentralized exchanges. Like there's Pancake Swap, there's Uniswap, there's a million of them, where you can trade one token for another token and do it in a decentralized way. There's no middleman in the process. And so that leads to all kinds of interesting things. So like big picture, all of the traditional the traditional finance instruments that are traded, right, or even like insurance policies, or the traditional financial world is being rebuilt with a lot of experimentation. A lot of it doesn't work, some of it will, but it's all being rebuilt onto blockchains like Ethereum. So it's very interesting to see the innovation that's happened.
Well, a fun little side note for the people in this room is that we all know Bitcoin was designed by somebody named Satoshi Nakamoto, but we're talking about Ethereum, and the brain child behind that is Vitalik. Is it Vitalik Buterin?
Vitalik, yeah,
Vitalik. And he's been to New Hampshire. He came to Pork Fest when he was like 18 years old. And
Yeah,
I was down in Keene with him. We went to a court case, I think, for Ian Freeman. And he was 18 or 19 years old. And he's the founder of Ethereum. And we all know him here.
yeah. I think at the time he was a writer. He was a writer for Bitcoin Magazine when he was up here the first time. So he migrated from Bitcoin to Ethereum. There's a man named Nick Szabo. Let me get my names right here. Yeah, Nick Szabo is credited as being the creator of a smart contract, the concept.
Certainly, we're early adopters in our libertarian and free state project community. It's very exciting. A lot of us don't even know how it works or what it's doing, but it's fun to watch. And we've been doing this for many years. And a lot of us are kicking ourselves for not buying more Bitcoin back in the day, but that's okay. There's still room to run. So this next slide is talking about investing. And I should have put in a big slash to say investing/speculating, because I don't like to say investing in cryptocurrencies. Yes, we've seen some amazing returns, amazing increases in value, but it's not quite the same as buying a business, a share in a business where they're producing something and selling something. So I thought we could touch on this, and we're open to questions from the listeners. Just post them in the chat room. We'll be happy to address them. But let's talk about investing, because some people are doing trading, because we see wild swings of 5%, 4% in just a day. But that can be real money if you're investing big money and doing that. Other people are hodlers, HODL, hold on for dear life. They're holding it for long term. Some so-called Bitcoin maximalists. So I wonder if you guys have any experience in investing crypto, and for people that want to do that, what you think some of the best ways are to get started, whether it's with a wallet or in an exchange. Let's do some brainstorming.
I always tell people to dollar cost average to get started, but maybe Joel has another idea.
Well, let me give the high end overview, because the very specifics of this kind of stuff is not something that I've jumped deeply in. I didn't come into this as an investor. I came into this as a super enthusiast on the space and technology and what it could do. So as far as so crypto is, there's two things that I believe, right? One thing is I believe that decentralized technology such as this is going to be a significant portion of the economic activity of the future. And so I'm personally really confident that crypto is the future. And so on the other hand, it's still early, even 10, 13 years in. It's still a very speculative asset where, for the most part, with very few exceptions, every project is running on basically what for companies would be like VC, like venture capital. They're still not pulling a profit yet. There's still not enough activity in most to basically make them solvent. So right now it's still kind of in a gamble, right? It's still kind of an investment. It's still a speculative investment. So, and obviously everything I should say, and everyone here should say, none of us are investment advisors. This is not investment advice. This is all for education purposes only, and et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, there's actually 3 different options instead of the 2 where it says, can I, just holding or trading. Then there's a third, which I would loosely categorize as staking. So holding is just you buy an asset and then you just wait for it to go up, I guess, over a long period of time. Trading is where you wait for it to go up versus other ones that you think will go up. Then you trade it for the other one and hope that will go up. And by bouncing back and forth, you hope to actually, make a profit off that. Staking, although I'm going to talk about stuff that is technically not defined as staking, but just in general, it's when you park your money somewhere, your crypto somewhere, and get interest from it. Some of these things, like a lot of proof of stake cryptocurrencies, for example, let you do this. You just park your money somewhere, run a node as part of that. That's usually glossed over though. But basically, you just get an interest on your principal over time. And then there's this big thing in DeFi, decentralized finance, is you can basically provide liquidity for exchanges, or you could provide liquidity for loans or whatever else. But basically, you give your money and you kind of earn on top of that. So that's my big overview. I'm sure Keith is a little bit more up to date on ETFs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I want to insert a couple of ideas here. We talked earlier about the real estate angle to this. And some people, a lot of our friends actually have big cryptocurrency holdings. And they're wondering how they can transfer some of those assets into a different type of asset class, such as real estate. And there are different ways to do it. You could obviously liquidate some of your Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, whatever you have, liquidate that, pay capital gains tax on it, and take the fiat money and buy real estate. It could be income producing rental property, for example. But there are also some programs out there that will let you borrow against your crypto holdings. That's another angle. So let's say you have, for example, $1 million in Bitcoin. A lot of these lending platforms, such as SALT, S-A-L-T is one. There's another one called U-Hodler. I'm not endorsing them, I'm just mentioning them. They'll give you up to a certain loan to value. Let's say you have $1 million. They may loan you like 400,000 or 500,000 against your Bitcoin. So they hold your Bitcoin and they'll give you cash, and then you can go out and buy a property. And then this is great if you're doing flipping or investing, or then maybe you down the road you refinance that property that you've bought cash and put it into a loan, but you haven't sold your crypto. So that's one thing. Another thing I want to share with this group is regarding the IRAs. If you're a true believer, like Joel and Keith and myself, that crypto is going to keep going higher and higher, then you might consider investing or speculating or putting some of your investment dollars into a Roth IRA. If you have access to a Roth IRA. And that's because investments in Roth IRA, the money it makes, the value increases, the gains are not taxed when you take them out. So let's say you put $50,000 into a Roth IRA now, and 20 years from now, and 20 years from now it's worth $150,000. You take it out, no capital gains. But if you really think crypto is going to the moon, then maybe consider putting some of your Roth IRA assets into some cryptos. And it's not super easy to do. You have to work with some companies that specialize in that, and they charge high fees. But consider it, think about it.
Yeah, I should add to that a company I know of, Valkyrie or ValkyrieInvest.com, has a few different crypto trusts that supposedly are IRA eligible from certain providers. So there you go.
I've done it through Bitcoin IRA, and then Tom Woods has some marketing agreement with the company. I think it's called BitTrust. So there are some out there. You can contact us or just Google Bitcoin IRA or crypto Roth IRA if you guys are interested in that. Amy, would you share with us one of the questions in the chat room, and hopefully one of these smart guys on our webinar can answer that for JMT.
I don't have any questions.
I could just jump in on the last topic. Mark, you put in a chat for me. So we're getting interest in the banking industry in New Hampshire, the banking industry, the trust industry, the credit union industry. And I was in the State House earlier, and there's one of the lobbyists represents the Bankers Association. So all the banks in the state are members of this association. And he was telling me that they're getting interest from their from some of their members. And he pointed to this the link you'll see. It's ProvBank, bankprov.com. They actually have a lending product. I don't know, I'm not endorsing, I just found out about this today, but it's an example of how the innovation is spreading even in the traditional finance industry. They have a special lending product that allows you to use your Bitcoin or your cryptocurrency as collateral, and generally they'll lend you some percentage of it, like 50% or some percentage below 100%. But the advantage to doing that is you save on capital gains taxes, right? So you can use the money as a loan, and you know, with the idea of paying the loan back eventually. But if you buy something like real estate, you know, that tends to appreciate, at least historically. So you know, it's kind of an interesting way to do it without having to pay 25 or 40% capital gains, whatever your rate is.
Amy, I apologize. The message I was talking about in chat room was a direct message, so I'll just read it here for Keith and Joelle. It says, if you wanted to explore writing a smart contract, who do you hire? A coder?
It's interesting.
Are there specific smart contract vendors? And that's a great question.
It's a great question. So you can download like free software tools, depending on if you're Windows or Linux, depending on what environment you're developing in. And the Ethereum language is called Solidity, and it looks a lot like JavaScript. So if you're familiar with JavaScript programming, so it's something that you can do yourself. There's actually different courses that you can take online that'll walk you through how to create a smart contract. And it's something that you can do yourself. You can deploy the contract, you can execute the contract. I don't have anything at my fingertips, but we can certainly dig up if you're interested. As far as hiring, I would imagine the market is pretty, you know, is growing for developers that develop smart contracts. The really interesting thing about smart contracts is there are, because there are legal implications behind smart contracts, that lawyers are getting involved in being experts in smart contracts. So there's a whole industry developing around smart contracts, legal aspects of it, the auditing aspects of it, security aspects of it, and of course coding it.
JBT, did that answer your question? If, you know, if you'd like more details or like to drill down on that, just put something in the chat. Yeah, Brent said that that's good information, so we appreciate that, guys. Here's a fun fact for you. I'm actually selling my house for Bitcoin if we got any takers. I've sold 2 properties already in New Hampshire for Bitcoin back in 2017 and 2019. And now I thought I'd sell the 3rd one. This one's offered at 10 Bitcoin. And I remember buying a 1-pint jar of honey for 1 Bitcoin at PorcFest years ago. So if that gentleman who sold me the honey, you know, has 10 Bitcoin around it, he can buy this house, and it's a way to trade one asset class for another. All right, we want to address any questions from the crowd here, and certainly Joelle and Keith, if you guys want to add some more, please do. In the chat room, if you scroll to the very top, we have links to both these gentlemen's social media accounts. Keith is very active on Twitter. Joelle is very active on YouTube and other channels. And these guys are certainly a resource for you who are listening tonight. We really appreciate them being here. Keith just posted something in the chat room. Is that to do with how to write smart contracts?
Yeah, that's an example of a Pluralsight. Is they have a lot of courses on how how to learn to code, and that's one of them that they offer, and there are several, but that's an example to get started.
Okay. I put up on this shared screen tonight, right now, something about some of the links from YouTube. Not all of our listeners will know that there's an alternative YouTube that doesn't get involved in censorship. It's called Odyssey, ODYSEE.com. The founder of that company is a friend of ours, and he does great work. And his company also has some cryptocurrency and tokenization angles to the company itself, which is Library. So they're doing good work based in here in New Hampshire. They've hired a lot of free staters, and they're battling the SEC right now, but I think they're going to come up on top eventually. Same problem that Ripple or XRP is having right now. So here are some of the links to our panelists tonight. If you guys want to reach out to them directly. And then other resources, we like Naomi Brockwell. She's a video caster and YouTuber based here in New Hampshire. She's great. She offers a lot of good information to the masses about cryptocurrency and privacy. That's another issue we are concerned about here. Let me ask you guys, in our remaining minutes, what are some of the best privacy coins? We touched on this last week, but I'm between Monero and Zcash, and I want to know which one has the legs to last for the next 10, 15, 20 years. What do you guys think?
Ooh, well, let me, that's a very complicated question. I don't have the answer, but let me throw you some things to think about on that. First of all, both are known for their ability to provide increased privacy over what other blockchains or most blockchains tend to do. And which brings up this term privacy coin, which I don't really like. The term is kind of made up by the media anyway, but I think that long term we will absolutely need much better privacy in cryptocurrencies. Not even long term, but like short term as well, like right now. Now, I think that you won't be able to get a cryptocurrency project going get a lot of people using it if it doesn't have good privacy in the future. Right now, people just don't know, and so there's chains that get away with it. So that's where I'm like, don't know exactly which way things will go. Maybe privacy coins, as they're called, will just die off because their technology is going to be adopted by currencies that have a little bit more mainstream appeal in other ways, but we'll still be able to offer this. And so then why would you want this one trick pony? I think you need to be able to do a lot of things in the future. As far as the comparison between the two, it's where it gets tricky, and people get a lot of like, this is one of those subjects where you get a lot of the most emotional people in crypto getting all upset about one or the other. But I think so. Zcash encrypts their transactions so that not all of them you have to opt in. You have to basically turn the feature on, but it uses some very complex and state-of-the-art cryptography. Some of the criticisms of that is that it's almost like too new, too complex. But I mean, I'm not a cryptographer, so I can't really say anything to that. But basically, it hides everything. Now, Monero works. First off, its feature is always on, meaning you can't turn it off. So it's much more, I guess you could say, newbie friendly. If you're at that stage where if I'm using it, I'm private. If that's your mentality, then Monero is definitely easier. It works through a decoy model where every time I send a transaction, it sends 10 transactions. Only one of them is a real one. And so you have to kind of guess which one is the real one if you're trying to snoop and like analyze that kind of stuff. I think that the decoy type model is my personal opinion. Again, I'm not a advanced cryptographer or anything like that. I don't think it's going to last with the same level of robustness over the long term. I think that that, and for example, the way a lot of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Dash have like a coin mixing service that basically mixes a whole bunch of coins together, so you don't really know. It's hard to tell that where it came from, as in whose coins went where. that kind of stuff, the security through obscurity model, I don't think it's, I think it's starting to fall behind as far as like the state of the art type stuff. So um I, and also the thing is like, I've said this before. I've called Zcash, you know, maybe it sounds a little bit derogatory to say it, but I mean it in only the best way. I've called it a science project because I think there's a lot more people using Monero today to actually buy goods and services, and it's growing faster. But Zcash has a lot of academic research behind it, and there's a lot of money, a lot of venture capital and stuff like that too, all behind it to try to like basically develop the most state of the art privacy. So I don't know if that's really helped it get used for its real purpose a lot, but it does mean that it's going to be constantly developed for a long time. And so my bet is on Zcash lasting longer, even though I'm not sure if it's going to be the one that's used long term. Its technology will probably be used long term, however.
Yeah, that's privacy is a really interesting subject because initially Bitcoin was pretty private because nobody knew who owned the addresses. And then a company in Europe called Chainalysis started collecting all the data to be able to tie people to transactions. And so that's kind of undermined Bitcoin's privacy. Initial I can't ever say that word.
Pseudo
Pseudonymity.
anonymity,
It's pseudo anonymity, but I think you take out a syllable.
pseudomity, whatever.
Pseudonymous.
Zcash uses something called zero knowledge proofs, and the ZK snark. ZK snark. If you Google that, you can find the definition of the cryptography that Zcash uses. Monero uses something called ring signatures. So a transaction doesn't just go from person A to person B. It goes to a group of people. Some of those transactions are real, and the signature is multiple parties, right? So that kind of provides, I guess you would call it plausible deniability, right? So you can't ever prove that your coins went to this other person. It went to this group of people and was dispersed from there. So Zcash has a really interesting origin story, by the way, if you want to look that up. It's they had this really complex like ritual to create the randomness behind it. Like they went to hotel rooms around the country and they drew the curtains shut, and they had this like and each of the people that created the first block, initiated the blockchain, each had a piece of it, and they didn't know what the other pieces were, and then they somehow like destroyed the evidence afterwards. So it's kind of a strange, but it as Joel said, it's more of a science experiment. Zcash has open transactions, and then they also have, as Joel said, opt-in privacy transactions, so you can choose. And it's interesting. I think Gemini might have been the first exchange to list Zcash. And I think the only reason they were able to do that, they're headquartered in New York, highly regulated. I think the only reason they could do that was because of the open transactions that Zcash has. So that, they're not implementing any of the privacy aspects of Zcash. So as far as like adoption, I think that gives Zcash a little more, traditional adoption. Then Monero is more, it's a little more difficult to acquire Monero. And there's also the issue that Monero's blockchain is very large. Because of the ring signature, it's hard for them to minimize the amount of data they have to store, because every transaction is stored on the blockchain. And that touches on the idea of decentralization. The bigger your blockchain is, the more data required to store it, the fewer computers around the world that can run it. Eventually you need lots of gigabytes to store the blockchain, right? So I think Monero's had some issues with the size of the blockchain, the growth rate of their blockchain. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But there's things like Mimblewimble. There actually Litecoin, which is sort of like a clone of Bitcoin. They've implemented Mimblewimble onto their blockchain, and that provides privacy aspects. And so I think what you'll see is these innovations on other chains will migrate eventually to Bitcoin, Ethereum, you know, the top few, because they are, after all, software projects, and software evolves over time. Bitcoin being so decentralized, it's difficult to upgrade it. So the upgrades happen very slowly. There was a big, it's called the hash wars, or the, you know, the, when Bitcoin Cash forked from Bitcoin, that was a really interesting era in the, you know, in the history of blockchain, where there's disagreement on how big the block size should be. And so they split. And a lot of that discussion was around, you know, how much data to store on the blockchain. And so you have the Lightning Network, which has privacy built into it to some degree. It uses onion routing, similar to the Tor browser in the protocol, the Lightning protocol. So there's some privacy aspects there. And then Bitcoin just had an upgrade. I think it was like the fall of last year, sometime around that time frame. It quietly upgraded. There was no big fight about it, and they implemented something called Taproot, and I think mass signatures. So they upgraded the blockchain so that in the future they could develop more privacy around how transactions are stored. But that infrastructure will take a few years to build out. And the gist of it basically is, you can, instead of one address being stored, they can bundle a bunch of addresses together, make it look like one address, but then programmatically they can, you know, prove that your address was part of that bundle. And so eventually you'll see, I think, wallets, you know, implement that feature. But it's all very interesting, because the government controls the exchanges, and they don't want privacy to happen, because they want to be able to surveil things. So I think we'll see, you know, we'll see the developers implement more privacy protections, but it'll be resisted by, you know, the major exchanges and so forth, because of, you know, it could obfuscate activity. So it'll be interesting to see that play out in the next couple of years.
It'll certainly be a continuing game of cat and mouse. And I neglected to mention, of course, Dash. Dash has a lot of nice built-in privacy measures. Pivx, we have a good friend who works for Pivx, PIVX. So there are a lot of other ones out there. But the idea here is we want the listeners to be aware that there are some things that are very privacy oriented. And let's you know, do your due diligence. We're not investment advisors or telling you where to invest your money, but do some more research for yourselves. And let's get this wrapped up. We really appreciate our panelists tonight, Keith Ammon, Joel Valenzuela. Thank you guys very much again for being here. I put your contact information up on the screen share. So those of you who are watching, go ahead and do a screenshot of it, or just contact Porcupine Real Estate, and we'll get you their personal contact information later on. And again, thank you all for visiting and tuning in tonight. It's been a really great conversation, and let's keep going strong. Let's see what we can do to bring down the government and increase personal privacy.
As part of the government, you shouldn't be saying that